OSINT is a very common term used when talking about social engineering, and it's just simply open source intelligence. Now, you yourself have obtained OSINT before from the web. So, for example, you have probably looked at LinkedIn and identified the various roles and positions and history that an individual might have. That sort of intelligence, and it is intelligence, it certainly can be used in an intelligence context. That sort of intelligence can be very useful, and you're going to see a very poignant example of exactly what I mean by that quite soon. Now, just to be clear, open source intelligence has got nothing to do with open source software. They're two completely different beasts. It is, however, somewhat related to SIGINT, or signals intelligence. So this is intelligence gathering by interception of signals. And normally you'll find that governments have SIGINT departments. Perhaps most infamously, it was the NSA. They collected huge amounts of signals intelligence, as we consequently learned in the Snowden leaks. So a related concept, albeit one that, as is said here, is done in a covert fashion using clandestine sources. But it's much more than just LinkedIn or social media. There are many online sources of OSINT. Let me give you an example of one that you might be a little more familiar with. And in fact, let's produce a very specific OSINT exercise that I saw just recently. I recently saw a video about a wave pool that Kelly Slater, the 11 times world surfing champion, had created in some secret location. Many people were fascinated by this. It was a perfect wave and it had been built inland somewhere, entirely artificial, but nobody knew where it was. Until, that is, a fellow Aussie who was quite curious about where this wave might exist used a very well-known OSINT resource to track it down. We can now reproduce this process ourselves. So let me jump over to this tool, which you're probably already quite familiar with. Google Maps. This is a perfect example of open source intelligence. Anybody can jump online and use it, and obviously it has an extensive amount of information in there, due to how comprehensively Google has mapped the world. Let me give you an example. Let's just start zooming in, and as we get closer and closer, you're going to see the location of Kelly Slater's secret wave pool. The eager sleuth had tracked down the wave pool to a location in California. Now, inevitably, it was a little bit harder than just picking a spot on the map and zooming in as we just did. But there was enough information in the original video that Kelly Slater had released, which gave him clues as to the location of the pool. Google Maps has such a great collection of high-fidelity photos, it wasn't too difficult to track down the actual location. But it's more than just the aerial imagery that we're seeing here. With a feature like Google Street View, using maps for open source intelligence becomes even more powerful. So for example, one particular landmark was identified in this location just here. This particular power pole, with the unit that you see towards the top of it, was matched to one in the video. Now that provided just one more additional attribute to give the sleuth confidence that he had indeed located the secret wave pool. Now, this is really just an example of how open source intelligence information can be used to pinpoint locations. Clearly, when we talk about social engineering and how an OSINT resource such as Google Maps might be valuable, we're now starting to talk more about reconnaissance of physical locations. So for example, what buildings might be on a site? What might their purpose be? Are they there for manufacturing or warehousing? What's the security situation? Can you use Google Maps in this way, in conjunction with Street View, and identify whether the gates are manned? Can you zoom right in on the satellite imagery and see which buildings may have access to which other buildings? Google Maps is a very powerful source of OSINT. But let me show you another one, and this is one that you may not already be familiar with. This is wiggle.net, And Wiggle is a very comprehensive collection of wireless access point SSIDs, what their name is and where they're located. It's presently defaulted me to San Francisco. Let's allow it to use my location and we'll see what it finds near me. So here we are now, near my home in Australia, and we can see on this Google map, it's plotted all of the access points it has indexed. Now, if we were interested in a particular company and what their wireless access network may be called, we could zoom into the location, perhaps a location we used finding Google Maps, and then see what names of access points are listed nearby. Alternatively, we could always just search by SSID. Netgear is a very popular name given that they actually make access points. Let's see what we find now when we filter this list down. Obviously the list shrinks significantly, but we can still drill down and with quite a degree of accuracy locate the wireless access points that have an SSID named Netgear. This is a great example of OSINT again. It's out here in the public domain, anyone can find it, and it discloses something that could be very useful to the social engineer. A really good example of that would be the ability to already know what someone's wireless access point is called before getting in touch with them and attempting to socially engineer them. So think about the last module and the cold call virus scam. If the attacker already knew the name of the network of the person they were talking to, that would immediately give them a lot more credibility. That would be a piece of information that the victim of that social engineering attack would find to be very credible because it's right, and it's information that they would not necessarily expect a malicious party to know. That makes it very powerful. Now these were just two very brief examples, Google Maps and Wiggle. And there's a whole trove of other sites out there that do similar things with different data attributes. We're going to look at a few of them as we progress through this module, but hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of what's meant by OSINT and just how easy it is to perform reconnaissance with openly available services like these. Let's now move on and start to look closer at organizational reconnaissance.